Hey guys, Magnus Robert here, bringing you another Dead Walking Dead child character video. Today we're still on the prison because we'll be looking at Luke and Molly. Hey! Luke is of course male, he is played by Luke Donaldson, he is 8 years old and first appeared in 30 Days Without an Accident. Molly is of course female, she is played by Kennedy Bryce, she is 10 years old and she first appeared in 30 Days Without an Accident. Nothing is known about their lives before the outbreak, aside they probably went to elementary school. Also, the actor for Luke did suggest that Luke and Molly could be siblings. This isn't confirmed, but it's probably a good bet. It's unknown how they survived after the outbreak began, maybe their parents kept them safe. One way or another though, sometime in between the events of season 3 and 4, Luke and Molly joined the prison. It appears without their parents, so they appear to be orphans. Luke and Molly during this time adapted to prison life and began frequenting Carol's classes to teach the kids survival skills. Also, I don't know if one of them drew this picture. It's implied it was Lizzie, but at the same time, this picture seems to be drawn by someone a bit younger than Lizzie, so I don't know. Maybe Luke or Molly was the artist of this piece of art. In season 4, Molly is first seen eating breakfast when Daryl passes by. Cool. She is later seen alongside Luke and the Samuel sisters, waving to a zombie with a name tag that says Nick. Carl confronts the kids and Lizzie argues that the walkers are just different. Eventually though, Lizzie tells Luke and Molly to come to story time with her, so they both wander off. Later, both Luke and Molly are seen at story time listening to Carol read them a book. When Ryan Samuels wanders off, Carol closes the book, preparing for her knife lesson. Luke asks Carol if he should take watch, and Carol tells him to do that, so Luke heads to the door to keep watch of any prying adults. Ooh. As Molly begins to listen to Carol prepare her lesson about knives. When Patrick says he's worried that he'll vomit on someone, Molly slightly moves out the way of the impact zone. Carol's lesson is then interrupted by Carl, but it's assumed that it carries on after Carl leaves. Molly and Luke then return to their cell blocks in D block. The next morning, Patrick, Greg and other victims of the flu attack the cell block. Luke is caught trying to escape and sees a zombie Greg coming at him. He scoots away scared. Daryl rushes over to help, telling him to go, get out of there. Daryl then picks up Luke, kills Greg and hands Luke off to Karen. Molly then rushes down the stairs screaming about the walkers. Carol rushes to her, grabs her, says come with me. She then rushes to Karen to join Luke and another girl in the cell with, of course, Karen. They then stay inside the cell until it's safe. After these events transpire, Molly is isolated in the administrative wing along with the other non-sick children and the elderly. However, Luke began to show symptoms of the flu and thus was moved to isolation in A block. He begins to play checkers with Jeanette whilst completing his isolation. When a guy coughs himself to death, Luke is told to get back in his cell by Herschel. When the commotion happens and residents begin to die and turn and cause absolute havoc and people are dying everywhere, Luke peers out to see what's happening, but Herschel spots him and tells him to get back in his cell, adding Lizzie to the cell too, telling them both to stay put there. Both Luke and Lizzie then see turned residents come for Herschel after he's armed with a shotgun. Herschel spots them spying and instead decides to shoot the walkers out of view. Eventually, both Luke and Molly exit their respective isolations, of course because Daryl and co brought the medicine. After the governor attacks, Luke and Molly are instructed to evacuate to the bus. Molly helps to carry Judith whilst Luke carries a bag alongside Mika. Lizzie then rushes over and objects to getting on the bus, as Carol told them all to be strong, so they should go get guns and help fight. Clearly both Luke and Molly agree, although they don't grab guns themselves. They put Judith in a safe place and head out with Lizzie and Mika, who obtain firearms. Both Luke and Molly watch as Lizzie kills one of the governor's militia members, but then they run off before Lizzie kills Alicia. And that is the last we see of Molly and Luke. Now, for one reason or another, Tyrese, Lizzie, Mika and Judith didn't meet up with Luke and Molly, and the duo decided to flee the prison on their own. They both walked through the woods, picking and eating fruit, but walkers attacked them and they ran away. However, eventually they reached some train tracks, they were attacked by some more walkers or possibly the same walkers, and they were overpowered, and both Luke and Molly were, presumably at least, devoured by the dead, leaving nothing but a little shoe. Later, Beth and Daryl come across what remains of Luke and Molly. Now, some people will argue that actually those remains are not Luke and Molly, that's Christopher and his family. But the shoe that Beth sees is undoubtedly Luke's, because I looked at the shoes in Too Far Gone, and his shoe here, they look pretty similar, and also the size of the shoe, it can't be any of Christopher's family. The most damning evidence to suggest that it's not Luke and Molly is when you first see the attack on Christopher and his family. Of course, there in the left, you can see who is presumably Christopher's mother and Christopher's father's wife being eaten, right? And you don't see any Luke or Molly remains there. However, I suggest an alternative theory, okay? Christopher's mother / Christopher's father's wife was potentially shielding Luke and Molly after finding them being attacked, right? Or potentially trying to rescue what remains of them, whatever it may be. She was overpowered, and so it's her body that's obscuring theirs. And also, I just feel like The Walking Dead was not going to go as far as to show a mangled, eaten corpse of a child. My other conclusion to this definitely being Luke and Molly is the fact that Beth cries the way she does and then does not bring up looking for Luke and Molly after this event, alright? This was where her optimism of them being alive dies. And to me, we're not seeing something that Beth is. Something that definitely concludes that Luke and Molly are dead. So that's my evidence. I'm pretty sure that Luke and Molly died sometime before Christopher and his family stumbled upon their bodies, and of course, they as a result were killed too. So RIP Luke and Molly. Luke and Molly were just more kids for the cast of Prison Kids, but they are unique to the others that we've looked at because they had scenes with Lizzie and Mika. Honestly, I always find it weird that they run away in the same direction as Lizzie, Mika and Tyrese. But somehow they lost that group and they went out on their own. It's a shame, but there wasn't really much they could have done with these kids, so I guess it makes sense to kill them off. And the scene where Beth finds what remains of them, I think, was really chilling and really sad. Anyway, Ripperoo, Molly and Luke. That was meant to rhyme, it didn't. Anyway, I'll see you in the next Walking Dead Kid Profile. Goodbye.